Hi James, lovely to meet up with you and do some further work on your game. Obviously the swing itself, as we looked at the start of the session, is coming on nicely. You've got the exit under control. We needed to lower that to get your swing back to a functional point so that you can get it around the golf course. If ever you get stuck underneath it, get a little bit rolling with the hands, hitting the big block to the right and the quick hooks, then the first port of call is to hit some pulls, realign the swing so that the club doesn't drop beneath the right forearm as fast from P5 to P6, and therefore doesn't require as much rolling of the club face on the way through. The main concern here at the start of this session was tidying up this through swing. One of the things that you still do, partly because of the way you used to swing the golf club, is you put some flex or can maintain the flex in the left knee when doing it at your worst. But there's a lot of flex in the finish, a lot of flex in the right knee, a lot of flex in the left knee, quite a lot of flex in the pelvis, and the spine flexes forward. That's where the head drifts forward when you're filming it on video. So I want to just tidy up the through swing. As much as anything, it's nuisance value. As you discovered recently playing tournaments, you're running that little pull pattern, little cut pattern nicely, and then suddenly we throw a big push in there, or we hit the neck of the club and we hit the dreaded shank. So do you want to tidy this up just to get things a little bit more going forward, long term, a little bit more appropriate for what we're going to try and achieve? So what we've got here with the drill to try and learn to extend is we've got about the feeling anyway, is that we've got 80% of the weight forward. We've got the ball opposite the right instep, and that then in turn is putting the ball as far back of the centre of the swing as we would really ever like to play from, which is going to create very much of a downward hit, steep angle of attack, and hit out at the golf ball. So you set up to hit a bit sort of big push out to the right that's very low, steep angle of attack, low dynamic loft, etc, etc. However, the task given is to hit the ball as high as you can from this setup. So you haven't got the luxury of adjusting the ball position, which is something that you would do if you wanted to hit it higher. You haven't really got the luxury of opening the club face because the ball's going to go further right. So the goal is to try and hit the ball as high as you can from a setup geared to hit it very low. So let's have a little look at what we tend to do from there. First of all, what we start to do is we start to push up out of the ground much more aggressively, both legs straightening. That brings the pelvis out of its forward tilt and allows it to continue to turn. And as you do that, as you push up out of the ground, you are shallowing the angle of attack and adding loft to the golf club. So whilst you wouldn't hit high shots in a tournament with the ball way back in the stance, if you understand that pushing up through the hit or extending through the hit rather than holding onto the flex like we see here on the right shallows out the angle of descent, the angle of attack on these shots was only around about 4 degrees down, which is pretty standard for a 6 or a 7 iron, despite how far back the ball was. We know the ball's going to push because of how far back in the arc. Remember the arc when it's put on the floor, centre of that arc is opposite the left shoulder. So we're hitting the ball way back on the arc. So yeah, the ball's going to be pushed out to the right. We can handle that. That's what I'm asking you to do anyway. We're actually accepting that that's going to be the shot. But the more we push up, the shallower the angle of attack. Even though the weight's forward, even though the ball's back, we can still get these balls launching high. I think the shallowest angle of attack we got was about 2.3 down. And the highest launch we got was about 21 degrees, which for a 7-iron with the ball so far back is pretty impressive. If we then just play that swing through, and we'll just match the other one on the right up to it, we start to see a marked difference in some key areas. First of all, the club hasn't passed the hands as fast. So the rate at which the club overtakes the hands has been controlled. The flex in the pelvis has started to diminish dramatically. The flex in the left knee now has gone through the hip as opposed to being held onto. And the flex in the right leg has also diminished dramatically. The two centres have also separated from one another. And the more axis tilt we have, so the greater this angle, provided we do it by pushing the hips forward. So remember, we've created this by tucking the hips under rather than letting the head drop back. If we let the head drop back and let the right knee flex, that's going to put a tremendous strain down here on the lumbar region. So we've started to push up out the ground more, seen a beautiful sort of comparison there between extension and flexion, and still able to launch that ball nicely, irrespective of how far back the ball is. Towards the end of the session, we did the comparison of a normal shot. Beautiful backswing. Really like that move there now. I think that looks strong. One of the things we said on your first visit was to floor the feet out and think more about doing it with the body rather than the arms, and that's improved dramatically there at that point. Get nicely into that lead leg in transition. Now we start to push up out of the ground in a much more appropriate manner with far less flex going into that lead leg on the way through. I'm just going to put these ball swings back at impact. Very similar looking impact positions. We can see there the hips coming out the forward bend, allowing it to continue, or the pelvis to continue to turn a little bit more consistently. Rate of overtaking started to curtail, head doesn't get pulled forward as far. Much more extension as opposed to flexion. So here we've tucked everything under. Here we flexed everything forward. Great session. Look forward to watching this one progress over the short visit for the festive period, and look forward to doing further work during the 2016 season. Well done.